land of mine, Nigeria on my mind, born in diversity, blessed beyond compare.
Ooh, through these 100 years, our struggles and through all our fears,
we're strong in our unity. Peace, our destiny. Here we are.
standing tall,
We're standing tall. Standing tall.
we are one.
We are 100 years.
Of unity,
Nigeria. We will stand. We will stand. Oh, this land of mine. This land of mine. Nigeria. On my mind. On my mind. I pledge to you my loyalty, my love, my ability.
Ooh, and as we celebrate ourselves, we shall rededicate.
To serve a new Nigeria, for a better land for all. Here we are, standing tall through adversities. We are one. 100 years. 100 years. Unity. Nigeria. We will stand on the mount.
My brothers and my sisters, I greet you in the wonderful name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Today we gather to remember Bishop Godwin Thompson Umoette, the 60th Bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
Good morning to you, my brothers and sisters in the United States. My name is Godwin Thompson Umoette, the 60th Bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
And so today we gather in memory, we gather in honor, and we gather in celebration with some of the many who knew him, worked with him, and we are grateful for your presence today. And thank God that you have stopped by as we pay tribute to Bishop Umoette. We want to move right into our reflections. We are so delighted today to have some members of the College of Bishops with us, and I'm going to bring them up at this time. And let's see, we have Bishop Walker as well. And today, as we reflect on this giant in the episcopacy, we have our senior bishop, Bishop Lawrence Reddick, who is the presiding prelate of the 8th Episcopal District. We have Bishop Kenneth Wayne Carter, who is the presiding prelate of the 11th Episcopal District. We have Bishop Teresa Jefferson-Snorton, who is the presiding prelate of the 5th Episcopal District. We have Bishop James Walker, who is the presiding bishop of the 7th Episcopal District. And we have Bishop Sylvester Williams, who is the presiding prelate of the 3rd Episcopal District. I might add that Bishop Walker, Bishop Williams, and Bishop Jefferson were also classmates, Episcopal classmates of Bishop Umoette. Let me say good evening, good afternoon to the bishops. They're very generous. They have a meeting scheduled today at 6 o'clock, but thought it not robbery to take a little time to come and share with us today. And for that, I'm very grateful. Let me begin with Senior Bishop Reddick. If you would just talk briefly a little bit about when you first met Bishop Umoette, and just talk about your relationship with him. If you take a few minutes to do that for me, please.
I don't remember when I first met Bishop Umoette. It was probably sometime in the 80s. It might have been at the General Conference of 82. I think that was it, but it's kind of like I don't remember when I did not know him. So I know he came over for the General Conference of 82, and we probably met then. And I found him to be a kind gentleman, an affable person. We used to be able to talk and laugh a lot.
Bishop Reddick, you served in Africa as well, and was he a pastor, preacher at the time? Did your paths cross during that time, or was it later on in his journey?
Our paths crossed, but he was living in Texas.
I see.
He was at that time on the faculty of Texas College, and he was a member of the Western Nigeria region, and he would respond and correspond, and he supported the work then. In fact, it was at the end of that term that we came together as an Episcopal district to kind of push him to be a member of the Judicial Council. And he was elected a member of the council in 2002.
In 2002.
After that, I remember him writing me the next quadrennium, telling me he was moving back to Nigeria. And we also supported his move home.
That's great. Bishop Carter, I believe that you gave Bishop Umoette an appointment. Can you tell us a little bit about when you first met him and your relationship with him as well?
I think I met him casually somewhere between 2002 and 2006 when I was running for bishop. And it was one of those kind of like hi, hello kind of meeting. But my real meeting of, at that time, Dr. Godwin Umoette came when I was there as bishop. I think in my second year as bishop in the 10th district. And Reverend Coco Daniel was asking me to come and be a part of this inaugural lecture that Dr. Umoette was presenting before the University of Uyo. I really didn't want to go because I was so busy doing the work of building the Breeden Montgomery Bible College. But Coco Daniel continued to press and said, you really need to be there. It's an important event and you need to be at this inaugural lecture. So finally I decided to go and give Dr. Umoette my support. And after hearing that outstanding presentation, I was glad that I'd really changed my mind.
Bishop Carter, I think we may have lost your sound.
You lost my sound?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now. Go right ahead.
Okay. The day of that lecture, I was very proud of being a CME because at that presentation, he was so awesome. As well as after it was over with, he introduced me to the president of the university, as well as with his other colleagues. And his gifts as a professor opened up my eyes to many great possibilities that we, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in Nigeria, could be invested in.
That's great. That's great. So let me go to his Episcopal classmates, and I'm going to ask them the same question as well. When did you meet him? Did you meet him on the campaign trail? As you were offering yourself? I'm having a Bishop Lakey moment right now. When you were offering yourself for the episcopacy, did you know him before, or was it during that time? We'll start with you, Bishop Jefferson-Snorton, then Bishop Williams, and then Bishop Walker.
I knew who Godwin Umoette was from a distance, and I think that probably started when he was elected to the Judicial Council. But I really had not interacted or engaged with him until we became classmates. And so I've known him primarily as a bishop, but just from all of my conversations, really know the love he had for education. He was truly a professor at heart.
Yeah.
And that was truly one of his gifts. So recent connection, but certainly a meaningful connection.
Thank you, Bishop Walker. When did you first meet him as well? And talk a little bit about that, sir. And then we'll get Bishop Williams.
All right. Well, what I would say is that you meet a person and then you meet a person. So primarily when we became classmates, that is when I got to know bits and pieces about Bishop Umoette. When I visited his annual conference, that was, I would say, when my eyes came open to a certain degree to the range of Bishop Umoette as an individual, to the respect that Bishop Carter mentioned, to the, I guess you might say, sort of unfolding of that intellectual capacity that Bishop Jefferson-Snorton talked about. All of those things came together in his annual conference, and so that is basically, I would say that it was a now you know kind of moment for me.
Right. Bishop Williams.
Yes. First, let me greet everybody. Blessings to you, and thank you for this opportunity as well to share. I was trying to think about that, and being last, of course, gave me an opportunity to think a little bit longer. But I remember hearing Bishop Reddick say that Bishop Umoette's first general conference was 82, 86 was mine. Now,
wow.
I'm sure that somewhere between 86 and 2010, when we were elected, our paths crossed, and we had a chance to, sort of greet everybody. And I heard the term used from distance. And I think that was what was going on as well with me. When I really got to know him, or really know who he was, aside from, what we possibly had heard during the general conferences in terms of his work with the church, was when he was elected, when we were elected together in 10. I think that was the first real knowledge that I had of coming close and having a relationship with him.
So let's take a moment and go back to 10. We saw this and this and this. And the sisters insisted on carrying their first bishop. And then we see this. Let me see if I can find that footage of Bishop Umoette. Yeah, all right. Here we go. So I'm going to come to the classmates in just a moment, but I want to ask Bishop Reddick and Bishop Carter, because you were already elected. What was that moment like? That was a historic election in so many ways, and you were already on the bench. And then I'm going to come to the classmates and talk about those moments of being elected and then sharing this historic moment. Bishop Reddick, what was that like in your memory?
For me, it was an electric moment. I was so glad to see the church elect a person who was serving in Africa, because I also thought it was very important to have in the College of Bishops a person with the African mindset. And I also knew that Africa had given a lot in terms of its commitment to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church for, at that time, at least 50 years. So I was grateful to see that moment. All I can say, it was electric.
Electric. Bishop Carter, what do you remember about that moment?
In some ways, it was kind of, I not spearheaded it, but I presented to the College of Bishops because of the leadership in West Nigeria, the Western Conference. They called themselves the president of the church, which was what we would call chairman of the steward board, got together and said that they wanted an indigenous bishop, one of their own. And I brought it to the college, and we talked about it and how it could happen, etc. And once it happened, it was an electrified moment, because I really believe the church needed a bishop to be able to understand the needs of their country and the countries that are around them. I think it was a electrified moment, but also it was a moment of joy that we have, all of us, arrived together.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's hear from the classmates. Bishop Walker, we'll start with you.
Okay.
And I'm just going by order. That's all.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm laughing for a different reason. I'm laughing because, well, electrifying is a great word that fits what that was, but and how that moment felt. But I will also say to you, it's probably, to be honest, it's probably one of the most inappropriate. It was probably one of the most inappropriate behavioral in terms of behavior that maybe I've experienced myself, because I think I was a bit out of control. I was very excited to see other classmates come to the stage, and so there was a lot of whooping and hooping that I remember happening at the time, and I felt okay with it. And a year or so later, I said, did I do that? Did that happen? So it was, I think I was blank in terms of emotion, in terms of just actually long-term memory. I think I was blank.
Yeah.
But it was overwhelming. And I do remember the first female bishop of the CME Church. And I do remember, that was an indelible impression because it was different.
Yeah.
And then the first African bishop of the CME Church. Again, it was different. The way they were carried to the stage,
yeah,
people that carried them, that was a different kind of experience. So,
and it looked like that wasn't an easy feat to hoist Bishop Umoette up. Looked like there was a little struggle there.
It seemed like there was some logistical stuff going on each time.
Right.
They had to kind of figure it out. But when it's a first, that's
it's
okay.
a first, right? Making sure you get there. Bishop Williams, what do you remember about that moment?
Well, I'm going to stick with the word electrifying, and at the time being, and say that it was certainly a wonderful moment. I remember, first of all, one of the largest classes in terms of 5 persons being elected. I remember the first female being elected, and I remember the first indigenous bishop being elected. So those things were, just sticks out in my mind. I remember as well Bishop Walker being the first elected in our class, so he was already on stage to welcome the rest of us, and so I was able to we were able to share that moment and so forth. I thought it was great. I can remember sitting and waiting, if you will, waiting my turn as we we were all elected in the order that we were elected, of course, but it was a wonderful moment. Um, I chuckled when Bishop Walker said it seemed to have been a little bit of logistics getting Bishop Umoette lifted. I chuckled because I don't think that too many folk had many problems with me. Because I remember before I knew it, I was swooped up. But it was a wonderful moment, I think, in all of our lives, and certainly in the life of the church, for us to remember that.
Bishop Jefferson-Snorton, and it seems like I remember you saying that I know the sisters wanted to lift you up, but you were determined they were not going to lie you flat on your back. I think I heard you say that on another occasion. But tell us about that moment, for you.
Well, that whole day was I think electrifying is a great word. It felt like a holy moment, a sacred moment, like the spirit was so high that day. But I'll be perfectly honest, when Bishop Umoette got elected, I think I was in a daze.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't believe that what had happened had just happened.
Right.
And so, I kind of don't really have a memory of watching, his tally go up. I don't have a memory of all that, because I think I was just kind of sitting there going, what? What just happened? I do remember, it's almost like you remember the moment you wake up.
Right.
And that was when the five of us stood on the stage together to pose for pictures.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very powerful moment
Indeed.
for me. That's when it kind of came to me that the church had indeed made history in so many ways that day. So
yeah, here's that picture that you referenced as well. And so this has been a tough season for the church in terms of loss. Bishop Best, now Bishop Umoette, and the impact that a loss of an Episcopal leader has on the church. First from the membership side, and then as a colleague and a friend, and on the bench. And can you talk about that impact, if you don't mind, Bishop Reddick? How does that? We know it impacts. It's a loss, but what kind of goes through your minds as you realize that we've lost an Episcopal leader. The church still has to continue, yet we have to mourn the loss of this great man.
We did not elect any bishops in 2018. Part of that means that the rest of us have spent these last 8 years bonding together, learning each other, knowing how to agree, disagree, and yet we're still one group when all that conversation is over. It is a great loss because every voice in that room counts. And when a voice is silenced, we feel it.
Yeah.
That the emptiness is there. It will be there.
Yeah. Indeed. Bishop Carter, would you chime in on that same question, please, sir?
Well, it's a difficult moment for me in several ways, but I still have some connections in Nigeria that basically daily call and say, what do we do now? So you do what you always done, trust God. So I think it's difficult to lose an active bishop. And because not only does the family, the immediate family, but the whole church family feels the hurt, the pain, and the emptiness. And I'm in prayer for those who are in the tent, as well as the whole connectional church, because we all are mourning.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And so as we're approaching the general conference, Bishop Reddick, I think I read an email or saw a statement that several of you will be going to take care of the remaining annual conferences. Would you just speak a little bit about that to those who are watching? What happens to the conferences post his passing?
Well, these plans were made before he passed.
Okay.
When we got the word that he was sick, we also got the word that he had planned to hold 7 annual conferences in the next 5-6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made agreement among ourselves as to who would go hold which ones.
I see.
And so the plans we are following through with, myself going to hold 3, and they're meeting at the same time in the same place, and Bishop Walker doing 2, and Bishop Carter doing 2, same time, same place.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we're only at this point standing in together until the Committee on Episcopacy makes a decision about who will be the Bishop of the 10th until the General Conference.
I see. I see. Let me ask Bishop Carter about the work in Africa and just how important is that work, that it continues uninterrupted, and that the church continues to show its support for our wonderful brothers and sisters throughout the continent of Africa.
Thank you very much. I think the work is very important because Bishop Adida, some years ago with the UACC Church, the United African Congregational Church, gave these churches, about over 150 churches, to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And this was the brother, Bishop Umoette is the brother-in-law to the bishop. And I had an opportunity to go over and interview his wife, which is Bishop Umoette's sister. And because much of our history is there in their home, as well as in that compound where Bishop Adida was buried. So yes, it was the foreign work is very important to our connectional work.
Thank you. I'm watching my time. I know you have another meeting, so I want to ask this final question to all of you. How shall the church remember Bishop Umoette? What will his legacy be? And what will we say to the future of Africa as we think about his legacy in the church? Let me start with you, Bishop Williams. How shall we remember Bishop Umoette?
There are a couple of things, I guess, that I could say about that. I think personally, I will remember him being, as Bishop Reddick stated, in the rooms with us. And from where I sit, I think he was a rather, may I use the term, no nonsense. He was serious about the work and wanted to make sure that that the work progressed. And whenever we were involved in discussions and so forth, even though there may have been times that he did not necessarily seem like he was on the same page with us, he was a man of convictions, and I could appreciate that. Aside from that, I think the work of the church that he has done with the various groups, or shall I say, with the various ministries of the church, will be remembered, along with the churches that he worked with, build, and ministries that he established in Africa. So those are a couple of things that I think I will remember in terms of his legacy for the church.
Bishop Walker, I'd like to ask you that same question about his legacy as well.
Okay. Well, first, I will say thank you to Bishop, Senior Bishop Reddick for allowing me to hold the annual conferences, because right now that would be his charge and not mine to just do, because things you just don't do things. You are either assigned, allowed, and I think in this case, allow would be the right word. I also would like to the question, how would he be remembered? I think he could be remembered as a finisher, because Bishop Carter, was really a catalyst to a lot of things that went on in the 10th. And to his credit, Bishop Umoette didn't spurn the work, but came in and put finishing touches on those works. And I think that's something that we don't often see, because we see people who abandon whatever was there before them and they start a new thing. Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen with him. And I think that was important. I think he should be known as a person who endeavored to change the narrative. And that is, we have a narrative about the way we talk about people from Africa, and that is that they have a bevy of signs somewhere in a corner, and every time a meeting is held, they pull one out. When that meeting is over, they put another one up. It was almost humorous for me that Bishop Umoette, as we drove by church, said, "You see that?" He would say, "You see that sign?" I said, "Yes." "The color?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, watch. We go by the next one, same color." So in other words, Bishop Umoette says, he told me, I want to standardize the signs for the CME Church all across the district, so they'll know us before they can even read the words. And so I think it was about the business of changing some narratives and some perceptions. He had a very wide range of interests. When we were there, we ate fish from the fish farm that he had. And they weren't yay big, they were enormous in size. And so he did that. And last but not least, at Breeding Montgomery Bible College, he was able to, with the help of Dr. Victor Taylor, appoint to the board Reverend Dr. Umoette, who I pray, and I don't want to get into politics of any other nation, but it looks like, if one were to be observant, that he will be the next governor of the Quabbam state. And I don't know if it's appropriate to say that or not, but I just did. I think it was an important appointment, and it was a way of bringing the CME Church to the fore. Yes. In Africa, particularly Nigeria. And I think those are the kinds of things that we should remember Godwin Thompson for. Umoette, Bishop.
Thank you, Bishop Walker. Bishop Jefferson-Snorton, you just returned from Africa. You were chosen to be a part of the official delegation of the United States to the 200th anniversary of Liberia, one of my favorite countries, and here are a few pictures of you there representing the CME Church, the National Council of Churches, as the chair. But Liberia is also one of our areas, I believe, that Bishop Umoette was on. So, having recently been there, talk about his legacy, and how was that experience for you, representing both the CME Church and the National Council of Churches?
Well, it was a very awesome experience. I didn't quite know what to expect, but I was delighted to have the opportunity. And the one thing that I will share as it relates to Bishop Umoette was that as we went about meeting with individuals, that picture is a picture of the first woman president. There in the middle is former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Was taking a picture with our delegation. But people in Liberia knew Bishop Umoette. They either had met him or they knew of him, which just really reinforces for me how, particularly in our African countries, the church is held in very, very high regard. I think me being a part of the delegation is also indicative of that. They were so delighted that the United States had sent a representative. And then when they realized I was CME and knew Bishop Umoette, that was even more joyful. So it was a great experience. I hope to capture it in some way. But as I think about Bishop Umoette, I would just like to say some things about him personal in terms of what he meant to me personally. We were next to each other in line. So every time the bishops lined up, he was right next to me. And some of the things that I really think what already been said, particularly his love and commitment to breeding Montgomery Bible College. But Bishop Umoette was just a joyful individual. He would come to our meetings sometimes directly off of an airplane where he had been in flight traveling 12, 15, 18 hours. And instead of going to his room, he would come to the meeting. And he would just be smiling, and he would be so joyful and just so glad to be present. He had a great sense of humor as well. And I think the bishops will remember this. When he first started talking about some of his initiatives, we were asking him, well, where are your pictures? And he didn't have any. But the next time he came to the meeting, he had pictures of everything. He flooded us with pictures of the fish farm and the chicken farm and all the projects that he had going, which just says to me he's a person who listens. Mm-hmm. He was a person who listened and a person who really was gifted at communicating. And he could do that both seriously, but also with a tremendous sense of humor. Just a great down-to-earth person who truly reflected the love of the Lord and the joy of being called to be a servant. So I will miss standing in line with him.
I'm sure you will. Thank you. Bishop Carter, take a minute or so and talk about his legacy. And then Senior Bishop, you get the final word. And then if I can say, the bishops will be excused from this portion of the program. And I'm going to bring up the other guests. So don't go away. Bishop Carter, let me, hold on, unmute you. And just kind of sum up what you think his legacy will be, please, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you again. But I want to piggyback that his legacy, I think, would be tied to the 2010 General Conference. And I called both of Bishop Jefferson-Snorton as well as Bishop Umoette as ceiling breakers. They broke the ceiling for our church to elect a female and to elect a non-USA bishop. So I call them ceiling breakers because that for many reasons, Bishop Umoette, because when we were building the Bishop Marshall Gilmore Cathedral, one of the most beautiful churches of our denomination, it was Bishop Umoette who gave a lot of support and was saying that we just don't want a church. We want a church that will symbolize what we really want to look for the future. And secondly, with the Breeden Montgomery Bible College, it was Bishop Umoette who required preachers in order to go into full connection or receive their elders' orders. They had to either have a required diploma or a degree. And that was something that many of us could not do. One of the things that I would say that he was a ceiling. He broke the ceiling.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop Carter. Senior Bishop Reddick, you get to close out this portion, please.
I want to thank you, Dr. Mason, for having us today and for allowing this opportunity. And I want to thank Bishop Carter also and my other colleagues for their memories of Bishop Umoette, particularly to Bishop Carter for stressing the grief that is in Africa. It is real. Mm-hmm. People mourn in Africa. Bishop Umoette will be remembered by me as an expansionist first, because I'm noticing whenever I look at the list of the work in West Africa, there's always some kind of growth, especially in Nigeria. When he came into Nigeria, there were not as many conferences as he now has. You will see, for example, a Calabar, a Kampa conference, which he originated. There's the gathering of a Southwest Nigeria conference that grew out of the Lagos conference. I'll remember him as an expansionist. I'll also remember him as a healer of relationships. Twice he invited me back in recent years to Liberia, and we had a church there that really had broken bonds with us and left. but he was able to bring that congregation back in the annual conference setting itself. And it made for some healing among persons who had been a part of each other for years. I'll remember him as an academician. I'm learning now that the students at the university where he also taught are also in shock about his passing. And I could say we really are in shock too. This was not expected for us either. And finally, I'm realizing more and more that he not only taught political science, he was a political scientist, because I'm getting the word from the governor of the state that he wants the funeral to be when he can be present. And as you showed the pictures, I saw the bishop of the AME Zion Church in Nigeria, Bishop Effiong. He's in the relationships Bishop Jefferson-Snorton mentioned. He has built relationships because he's that kind of person. So that's how I will remember him. And I want to thank you for highlighting his service. The last thing I will remember him for is he helps some of us on this side of the ocean recognize the genius in people who were not born here. The way he elected delegates at the Liberia conference, I have never seen anywhere else. And I wish I could tell you about it, but I shan't. But what it did do was inspire me to how a person can read the same rules and hear different angles of things to do. And it was exciting. But thank you for having us today.
Senior Bishop Reddick, Bishop Jefferson-Snorton, Bishop Williams, Bishop Walker, and Bishop Carter, thank you for sharing. This is certainly a part of the healing process. I had been invited to come to Nigeria by Bishop Umoette and was looking forward to that opportunity and an invitation. But we thank you all for helping us to heal through this moment. And we look forward to further announcements about tributes and honors celebrating the life of Bishop Godwin Umoette. As we transition, don't go anywhere. We're going to hear a few words from Bishop Umoette, and then I'll bring my other guest up.
Thank you. Share another story with you, and that of my mentor, my friend, and my brother, the retired Bishop Marshall Gilmore, who in his book titled From Bastard to Bishop drew our attention to how sometimes the beginning might not be the end. In this case, his end was better than the beginning. Those men and some others accept the mere fact that there are times when there seems to be a stone wall in front of God's children. And with the mindset that instead of giving up, you stand up. I beg you and I urge you, don't give up. But
Well, that video brings me great joy when I watch it, and I've watched it many times. I'm so grateful to the members of the College of Bishops for joining us. They have a meeting today, and but yet they thought enough to share a little with us, and we appreciate their remembrances. I am joined today by some additional guests who will share some thoughts and insight, including our guest today. We have Mrs. Carolyn Hassel, Sister Carolyn Hassel, who is the national president for the Minister Spouses. We have Reverend Claudia Harrison, who worked with Bishop Umoette and at one time served as the second vice president of the Minister Spouses for the 10th Episcopal region. And we have Frick and Frack, my fraternity brothers that you always see them together. Manuel and Stephen, Reverend Manuel Henderson, the pastor of Lane Chapel CME Church Shreveport, and a classmate, and the Reverend Stephen J. Delane, the pastor of Linden Shores Institutional CME Church, also a Lane College classmate. Good evening, good people. Thank you so much for joining me today, and also providing an additional perspective on the work and life of Bishop. I'm going to start with Reverend Manuel and Reverend Steve to talk about Bishop. When did you meet him? I think you met him as students at the Great Lane College. Tell us a little bit about him during that time. I had to dig real deep to try to find some photos of him. But Reverend Henderson, Reverend Delane, tell us a little bit about what you recall about then student Godwin Umoette.
What I learned about Reverend Umoette at Lane, being a small college, we all know each other. We all have names for each other. Steve was our serious person. I guess
Reverend Henderson, it's a Sunday. You can't lie on Sunday, okay? At least
and I was the quiet one. That's what I'm gonna tell.
Right.
And we had Roland Johnson, who we called him the white boy because he was stiff, and James Taylor. And Godwin was our serious person.
Mm-hmm.
Godwin was always the professor. He was always the serious person. He was always about the business of the church. And I think because of his seriousness, he kind of kept us on the serious track. So that's what I remember about him, his seriousness about his ministry, about the church. And I believe I met him. I was in summer school. I think it was the summer of 1982, after the General Conference, when he came to the campus with some other of our indigenous students.
Pastor Delane, when did you meet him, and tell us a little bit about it?
All right, first met him, I guess he came over initially after the closing of MI College.
Mm-hmm.
And many of the delegation that came with him, there were several African students who came, and to one degree, they were pretty much kind of off to themselves. They were kind of, I guess, new to the community. And when you come on the campus of Lane, in a group like that, the MI group, they kind of tended to be to themselves to a degree. Mm-hmm. And then I guess as they got to know other people, then it became, I guess, more conversationist and open to engaging in other people. But of course, I think Bishop Godwin Umoette he was a scholar. His focus was on his education. I don't think he got too much involved in extracurricular activities of that sort. But his main focus was his education. And that's kind of what I remember about him, is his focal point.
So he was very much a scholar on the campus as well. So when did you reconnect with him, and would you have ever thought, and I don't know whether any of you were at I know you were at the 2010 General Conference, but would you have ever thought from your Lane days, you knew he was serious, that he would be elected bishop, one of the bishops of our church?
It never crossed my mind, but when it happened, I said, "There goes the Laneite." So we were very much proud of the fact that he was the first indigenous bishop to be elected. And just something about having someone that you kind of rub shoulders with, a classmate of yours, to ascend to such great heights. So we were very excited about that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say we were very excited when Bishop Umoette, and I guess I'll share it now. When Bishop Umoette was elected, I was watching him, and I really wanted to go over, because as a Laneite, to help carry him to the stage. But I respected the pride of our indigenous delegates, and allowed them to do that, because if Lane College we're very proud. My godmother said once about Lane, the late Mrs. Patricia Willis. She said, "Manuel," she said, "son, y'all think Lane College is a big old university." I said, "To us, it is." and so we carry that pride with us. But one other thing that I'm reminded of Bishop Umoette, I'm reminded of his ancestry. What I
Yeah.
mean by that is he was proud of his ancestry.
Mhm.
And he made us know two things: what his name meant. I think he said he was named after his father, grandfather, or
That's right.
something. And then he also made us know how to pronounce his name.
Yes.
We just couldn't call him Umoette. He let us know his name was Godwin Thompson Umoette. So
Umoette.
I
Yeah.
mean, not only was he a serious guy in terms of academia,
Right.
but he was proud of his ancestry and his
Yeah.
skills.
Well, I tell you, you are right, and now it makes sense because 8 years ago at the general conference, I asked him if he would take an ancestry DNA test, because what I wanted to do was to learn more about his ancestry and connect him with family members who were descendants of some of his ancestors. And so here we are holding his tube. He had no problems in spitting into the tube at all. And I appreciate that because he too felt the importance of knowing about your ancestry and the importance of that pride. And so he did that. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Let me switch for a moment. Sister Hassel, you serve as the connectional president for the minister spouses, and we all know that Sister Elizabeth Umoette has always been right by his side and supporting him, and our prayers and support go out to her as the connectional president. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts, and then I'm going to get to Reverend Claudia Harrison, who shared with them often in a number of settings over the years. But tell us a little bit about your interaction with him, because he was also the patron bishop for the minister spouses as well.
Yes.
Yes.
True. So true. Thank you so very much for allowing us to share with you as we remember Bishop Umoette. As the patron bishop, he and his wife, our sister Elizabeth, brought with them an energy and a warmth, of course, for their culture, and how inviting and how approachable they both were. Bishop Umoette holds another distinction in our church in that he was, I would say, blessed and honored to serve twice as the patron bishop for the minister spouses. We are just, our hearts are full, of course, but we just thank God that he was there to share with us. I can tell you a story, a short story that illustrates the very caring nature of Bishop Umoette. When we were at the Unity Summit in Phoenix, the very last one we had before the pandemic, we, of course, as spouses, love to get together to have fun and fellowship, and we had planned a very big luncheon, which, of course, Bishop Umoette was an honored guest, the guest of honor, I should say. And some of his members from Africa had come over, and they had nowhere to eat lunch. And Bishop Umoette was just distressed that he would be invited to a feast, and he had members of his district that were left out. And he said,
"Oh wow,
I hate to impose. I know you probably have planned, but would you mind if the members from the 10th join us for lunch?" Well, of course we had to. And he was so gracious and so elated. But that just speaks to his caring and his warmth and his ability to help others at any time that he was around people.
Yes, indeed. Reverend Harrison, I'm sure you would agree as well. You had a long time friendship and relationship with the Umoettes. Just tell us a little bit about that, please.
Well, let me first say, I thank you for taking this moment to acknowledge a giant. The people in Africa, let me share the impact of the loss of Bishop Umoette amongst his people and the nation. It was said of the South African president, Jacob Zuma, who was, when Nelson Mandela died, that our nation has lost its greatest son. And what made Bishop Umoette great was precisely what made him human. We saw in him what we seek in ourselves. Bishop Umoette was a man of humility and strength. He was a man, he was proud to be African. I've heard that. He was proud to be an African and wanted to change the misinformed, distorted portrayal of Africans that the Western mindset or European mindset had, or even that the media portrayed. He knew of its beauty and wealth and the people and the resources. I recall my first minister spouse's president report when the 10th and the 11th became a new district for the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And I recalled giving my report. The focus of my report was establishing minister spouses departments across Africa and also the dire need that was there. So I showed a lot of the poverty and the need. It conveyed what I thought the Western mindset wanted to see. Well, after the first meeting with him serving as our patron bishop, he said, "Good report," but directed me to show and to depict a broader scope of Africa. There is more to Africa. So in my next reporting cycle, I had pictures of ministers' missions of my missions trip, traveling over 7 countries with women dressed in some of the finest, beautiful array of designer clothing, fabrics, sewn masterfully, tailored, with sculpted bodies. I gave the image of Africa that oftentimes we don't see. They look rich, they walk rich. Even the men, they didn't sit or walk with humps in their back. They stood erect, they walked with pride, you know. And so I depicted that. And then after I gave my report, the next report, I made it the cover of Mrs. Umoette and all of the fine women in their linen. And he just looked up and smiled. And then he nodded with approval, gave accommodations for an outstanding report. And then he later reminded me that his wife wanted me to go shopping for her. And so during that time, we just merged. He has a genuine attitude of a man that he was very prideful, and he wasn't prideful in the context of thinking more highly of himself. He was prideful of himself as in his nation, as an African, and he did not like for anyone to put Africans down or have a misconception of them being anything less than great.
Wow, that's incredible. And I tell you, I was so looking, and I'm still looking forward to the delegates from the 10th and the 11th, because they always come dressed correct. I mean, they come, and I've already told, Bishop Carter too. I said, whatever you got your folks wearing, I need one in a double XL. So bring it on with you, and all. You talk about, all of you have really helped to paint the kindness, the concern, and care of this wonderful scholar, this gentle giant. Let me share these comments from Dr. Lawson Kwame Adaje from Ghana, Togo, who of course serves on our judicial council.
Death of Bishop Godwin T. Umoette came to all of us as a surprise. It's a tragedy to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church and to the family and the Christendom. We sincerely extend our condolences to ourselves and to the church from the Ghana-Togo region. Bishop Umoette is a gentleman. He came to Ghana with all his heart and his mind. And as his mission supervisor, I gave him all the support that he needed to work as a bishop. One thing I would remember about Bishop Umoette is his art of delegation. Bishop Umoette would always want to delegate responsibilities, giving me the opportunity to understand the proceedings of our conferences and the polity of the church. I would forever cherish him and remember him because of his love for our people, because of his care, and always ability to listen. He's a listening bishop. He would always listen to you intently, and he would always see if he can make a move to solve whatever is presented to him. He's a leader of a class, and he's somebody we admired in terms of his academic achievement to the highest level. We bid him farewell by saying that may God give him a resting place, and may his soul rest in peace till we all meet again. In Jesus' name. Bishop Umoette, rest in peace.
Beautiful tribute. Such a beautiful tribute. I can't imagine, though I'm getting the sense from reading comments on Facebook following the announcement that Nigeria and other areas are truly mourning the loss of this great man, and our church is as well. And of course, it's exasperated because we're close to a general conference as well, you know, and just to know that he was such a scholar and a gentleman. Give me your final thoughts on how the church should remember the 60th bishop. We'll start with you, Sister Hassel, and then Sister Harrison, Reverend Henderson, and Reverend Delane.
Well, I think so much of what everyone has said probably could be tributes that would go on for a very long time. But for me, I would like to say that in our lives, we are blessed from time to time to meet giants, to stand among giants. And so much of the time, perhaps the tragedy is we are not realizing or appreciate that we are in the presence of giants. So I think we can remember Bishop Umoette as a giant who stood with us, who loved us, and allowed us to love him.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Reverend Harrison, your final thoughts.
Well, let me say this too, that, you know, I always say the minister's spouse is the one who ministers to the minister. So he will be remembered indeed for bringing honor to his nation. And he didn't teach, didn't just hand his people a fish, but he taught his nation through education the way to the fish. And not only the way to the fish, but he taught them how to catch the fish. Mm-hmm. He also knew education was the key to breaking poverty cycle. I had an opportunity to speak to some of the 10th Episcopal District members, and one of them said, I wanted to know politically science-wise, as Bishop Reddick said, he was a political scientist. Mm-hmm. Why was that such a major for him? And this was the response that I got. He said he had a passion to affect positive change to impact his people. The possibility of him being elected as one of the people's choice within his jurisdiction was very high. Mm-hmm. He was a man to be reckoned with. As long as politics and social administration was mentioned, within his jurisdiction. He was a man of great social, administration, and political influence in spheres. He even said that, and others have said, he had the possibility of being a representative for their jurisdiction. He was very politically involved, and he was highly, highly respected among the nation. Can I close by just saying that I will remember him not only for those things, but I remember him for his wife. You know, I just think that we could not speak of him without speaking of his wife. Mrs. Umoette was his queen, his Nubian queen, the one who ministered to the bishop. Elizabeth Umoette, whose name means God's covenant or oath of God, is what Winnie Mandela was when he was to Mandela. She is still a solid rock. Lady Elizabeth sees well to the affairs of her home, and not only that, but she's a businesswoman. You know, she owns a fashion boutique. Right. And I've had the pleasure of having many of her, clothing and selling them as well. But she's wise, and she's a no-nonsense woman. She's discerning and a praying woman who loved and cared deeply for her husband. And I think it's important at this time that even as we acknowledge our bishop in his passing, that we also remember the heartbreak and the heartache of the First Lady and keep her in prayer.
Absolutely.
When I spoke with her last, she says that the word is ever in her mouth. She's speaking the word of the Lord in her mouth. She says her husband is resting in the bosom of the Lord, and that gives her peace.
Amen. Amen. Reverend Henderson, your closing thoughts, and then Reverend Delane. Unmute yourself. Okay, go right ahead.
Okay. First, I think one of the ways that I will remember my classmate and fellow Laneite is as a gentle giant, and then as a scholar and an educator. I say a scholar and an educator because when he was teaching at Texas College, I sent a student to Texas College, and Bishop Umoette would call me and give me reports on her progress. And so he was really concerned about education. Also, the church and Lane College, we will see him forever as a friend and a Laneite. And I know Lane College will mourn his death deeply because if you check over the history of the church in the last 50, 60 or more, even more years, Lane College has always had on the bench a Laneite, Bishop Hort, Bishop Graves, Bishop Brown, Bishop Umoette, and now with the death of Bishop Umoette, Lane does not have representation. So he will live in our hearts as a Laneite who represented Lane College well. And finally, I would say my prayers go out to his wife, Mrs. Elizabeth Umoette, and for his family. And Skip, thank you for having the insight to have this program in his memory. Blessings to you, my brother.
Oh, thank you, my brother. Thank you so much. Reverend Delane, your closing thoughts.
Well, I guess my closing thoughts would be that he was a man of integrity. Didn't have any baggage that I knew of anyway. And he could walk with kings and queens without losing the common touch. And a person who included others and didn't think more highly of himself than he should have thought. Amen. And so we just thank God for the contribution that he's made to the church. And we certainly lift his family up in our prayers and the whole CME church as we go through this grieving process.
Yes, indeed. Well, I appreciate you all and thank you for sharing. And there are people around the world and within our Zion who could come on and share more about him. And hopefully there will be and I know there will be at some point an official formal celebration of his life, both in Africa and in the States. And certainly during the general conference, we will celebrate him and Bishop Best and all of the the saints beyond the river. Let me thank Dr. Teresa Duhart. I normally thank her at the beginning of the show, but because we open up a little differently, but I appreciate her support for this show, some of the wonderful pictures that she provided, and I don't know how she does it because she goes from one event to the other, but she is certainly the glue, and I give thanks to God for her. Also, there's an event that is coming up on this week, I believe. Let me put it up. Actually, week after next is Tuesday, March the 15th, a Women's History Month. Salute to the pillars of the CME Church. And we have Attorney Rita Brown, Attorney Barbara Boatnight, Dr. Barbara Campbell, Dr. Elnora Ham, hosted by the one and only effervescent preacher, Reverend Dr. S.A. Clark George. And this is a part of the Praxis Circle Network, and I wanted to get that in as well. Thank you all so much for your time. And God willing, look forward to seeing you all at the General Conference in Cincinnati, Ohio. We are on the road to Cincinnati, and I want to share this beautiful closing video that was sent to me by a brother who is from Nigeria. Let me see if I can find his name. I'll put it up on the screen, but I sure do appreciate. We're going to close out with this. God bless each of you, and I look forward to seeing you, good Lord willing, on next Sunday. Destiny Bassey did this beautiful video tribute, and we shall close out on this. And may God bless the soul and receive our dear Bishop. Let me share this closing video with you.
We